Joshua Zirkzee and Kobbie Mainoo could well push for an exit from Manchester United in January, and you couldn't really blame them for doing so in a World Cup year. Now, I want to talk about both of them in a bit more detail, look at it from both sides, and give you my opinion. Plus, I want to discuss how quite a lot of this, I think, was inevitable this season at Manchester United. Now, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe, because we have daily United videos. So when it comes to Manchester United's squad, the players keeping everybody happy, it was always going to be difficult. When you lose to Spurs in the Europa League final, you're only playing one game a week. One game a week should have its benefits. I don't think we've particularly seen them. But let's have a conversation in this video about Zirkzee, about Mainoo, and sort of some of the inevitabilities that were going to come this season that I think we're seeing now. Also, is this just a consequence of it being the international break and these sorts of stories come out? Maybe that's part of it, but the Kobbie situation has been going on for a long time. But yeah, the first thing I want to say is that all of this was inevitable after we lost to Spurs in the Europa League final and we went down playing only one game a week. You're not going to be able to keep every Manchester United player happy at all. And Zirkzee is the person that we're first going to speak about, because I want to remind you of something that Andy Mitten said during the summer to Jay from the Stretford Paddock, which I think is crucial to understand in this particular situation. Look, Zirkzee, last season, I don't need to tell you what happened last season. He came in, he was a bit too big for the Premier League. He got the weight down. He looked more agile, and I tell you what, he looks fitter this season, but he's not getting the opportunities. This is coming from the Daily Mail saying, look, Zirkzee's frustrated with the situation. He's probably going to be pushing for an exit in January, and I wouldn't be surprised. As I said, he obviously put the hard yards in the off-season, came into the pre-season in good shape, like lots of United players did, but he's hardly got a chance. Let's be totally honest. He's hardly got a chance. And that's the direct consequence, I would say, of a couple of things. Number one, I've already mentioned there, the inevitability of only playing once a week. But then when United go and spend their budget on Mbeumo and Cunha, and I'll speak about Šeško, and in particular Šeško in this situation. But Mbeumo and Cunha, am I playing Zirkzee ahead of either of those? No. Am I playing him ahead of Bruno in one of the number 10s? No. Ahead of Mason Mount? No. Would I rather Mainoo got opportunities? Yes, I think I would. So I feel sorry for Zirkzee in that sense, but I'm not going to be playing him opportunity-wise ahead of others. There's going to be game situations where I think Zirkzee and his physical presence would actually help United. But I want to remind you something that, as I said, Andy Mitten said about Zirkzee and about Šeško, because I think this is really important to understand, and this is unfortunate for Zirkzee, if I'm being honest.
So if I wind back a year...
By the way, Andy said this during the pre-season to Jay out on the pre-season tour of America.
Šeško was number one target for Man United.
Right,
number
okay.
one.
Yep.
Okay? I say that with absolute, take me to court and I'll prove it, right?
100%.
And yet he didn't come. So Man United ended up with Zirkzee, who was much lower down.
Yeah.
So United would have like 12 to 14.
Anyway, he goes on to explain about the different targets that United would have. But effectively, if United signed Šeško last summer and got the man that we wanted, we would never have signed Zirkzee in the first place. And now that we've got Zirkzee and we've got Šeško, he's obviously behind him in the pecking order. He's also behind the other two number 10s in the pecking order. United have got number 10s coming out of our ears, really. And unfortunately for Zirkzee, his opportunities are massively limited because of the signings that we've made, because we brought Šeško in, because we brought Cunha and Mbeumo in, and the fact that we're only playing once a week. It's created this sort of perfect storm that's not giving him the opportunities. I expect him to push for a move in January. I think United... See, look, if you're looking at it from the club's perspective, what's good for the club, Zirkzee stays, just in case Šeško gets injured. But if you look from his own perspective and what's good for him in his career, he wants to play every week. He won't get that at United. And I do feel a little bit of sympathy for him. And then at the same time, I think there was a massive sense of inevitability with the Zirkzee situation. A little bit less so with Kobbie. I think this is kind of down to a choice that Ruben Amorim has. Now, look, you've seen this reported left, right and centre about Kobbie being frustrated. Of course, he's going to be frustrated. And I've spoken about this quite a few times in terms of how I see it. But Kobbie's kept his head down. He's not really coming... People are saying that they're getting frustrated or annoyed with Kobbie because he's... I don't really know how or why. I haven't really heard any bad whispers coming out of the Kobbie's camp. He's just grafting. He's just waiting for his opportunities. They're just not particularly coming. And the way I see the Kobbie situation, I explained this in the live show. I think United are in a sort of a tricky position where I believe this is going to be Bruno's last year at the club. And I think Kobbie is his natural successor in terms of that squad position at United. So how do you manage the expectations of somebody who wants to play every game and develop and go to the World Cup? Because obviously the fact that it's a World Cup year. And like speaking of World Cup, quickly go back to speaking about Zirkzee. He's not particularly in Ronald Koeman's plans anyway. I'm not even sure that even if he was starting for United on the regular, whether he'd be in the squad. That's because Ronald Koeman just seems to take a dislike to him with the shape that the Dutch team has got. With Kobbie, what I'm genuinely worried about here is I think if United decide to block an exit for Kobbie in January, wherever that would be on loan, I think it could end up tainting his relationship with the club, how he views Manchester United, because he wants to play for United. He wants to be a starting player every single week and play for his boyhood club. And I think if United were to block an exit and then not give him more opportunities in the second half of the season, and he's therefore not in the World Cup squad, because let's be honest, each player's got 4 chances to go to the World Cup in their career. Realistically, you got 4 chances. So you're taking one of those away from him, and the next time he'd be what? I suppose he'd only be 24, 25 in that sense. But I could see both of them leaving in January. I really could. I think Zirkzee, it would be a prelude to a summer exit. I don't think he's a bad player in any way, shape or form. I think he's a very good technical player, but I think that in the number 10 pecking order, there's quite a few I play ahead of him. And now we've got the striker that we wanted to sign ahead of him last summer, but we couldn't afford. And we brought him in this summer. And we're only playing 1 game a week. It's kind of a perfect storm, but in a bad way for Zirkzee and his lack of opportunities. As for Kobbie, if nothing changes between now and January, I would like United to send him out on loan. Just a straight loan. No buy option, no sell option, no anything option. Just a straight 6-month loan where he's going to get game time elsewhere. And then, as I said, I think United will be moving Bruno on in the summer, and then Kobbie steps into his squad position. And then there's not really any question about whether he's going to get opportunities next season because the succession plan has happened. So that's the way I look at it. So yeah, I want to get your opinion on the Zirkzee situation and the Kobbie situation. And are there any other players that you think we might be having conversations like this about in a month or 2 or 3 months' time? Who else isn't really getting opportunities that maybe should be? I can't think of any off the top of my head. I'm sure there are some, by the way. But you can let me know what you think in the comments below, as you always do. Make sure you subscribe to United People TV if you are new.